some people wake up every morning and feel like the world is working against them, like no matter how much effort they put in, things just don't click. They might say, "I'm cursed," or "Nothing good ever happens to me," or even, "Why does this always happen to me?" But what they don't see is that every single one of those thoughts is a seed, a command being given to the universe, and the universe is always listening. It doesn't argue. It doesn't question. It simply responds. We live in a mental world, one where our thoughts aren't just private feelings. They are energetic frequencies, silently vibrating out into the fabric of reality, aligning events, people, circumstances, and opportunities to match what we keep playing in our minds. And here's the truth that most people never realize: the law of mental attraction is always on. It's not like electricity where you flip a switch. It's like gravity, always working, always pulling, always responding to the mental state we hold. Even when we don't know we're holding it, think about the last time you expected something bad to happen. You may have told yourself, "I bet this won't work," or "I know this day is going to be terrible," and without fail, you found exactly what you expected. Not because you're a prophet, but because your thoughts are magnetic forces. They attract their own confirmation. And if you expect failure, your subconscious mind will filter out everything that could contradict that belief and highlight everything that proves you right. It's not magic, it's mechanics. And when people say, "I tried thinking positively and nothing changed," they usually forget that the strongest thoughts we hold are the ones we don't even notice, the ones buried deep beneath the surface. They forget. That belief isn't just what we say out loud. It's what we whisper to ourselves in doubt, what we feel in our bones when no one's watching. So the question isn't whether you believe in the law of attraction. The question is, what are you attracting by the beliefs you've accepted as truth and the expectations you carry into every room you enter? Every relationship you start, every challenge you take on, the universe doesn't need your permission to work. It's already working. The only thing left is for you to become aware of what you've been unconsciously asking for all along. The mind is a mirror, and it reflects what you think, not just in your head, but in your life, in your relationships, in your finances, in your health, and in your peace. If you believe that people can't be trusted, you'll notice only the ones who prove you right. If you believe you're not good enough, you'll find evidence everywhere that supports that story. Not because the world is cruel, but because the world mirrors what you are broadcasting internally. Your thoughts shape your perception. Your perception filters your experience, and your experience becomes your reality. So if you want to change your reality, you have to change what you're projecting, and that begins with awareness. Most people live on autopilot, reacting to life, never realizing they're the ones steering the wheel. They think their thoughts are random when in fact their thoughts are choices. Repeated so often, they became habits, and those habits became identities, and those identities became lives. And that's why the law of mental attraction isn't something to be tested casually. It's a law. It's unbreakable, not because it punishes you, but because it operates perfectly every single time, based on the vibration you carry, the emotion you nurture, the vision you hold within. Have you ever met someone who just seems lucky? Everything works out for them. People want to help them, doors open for them, opportunities fall in their lap, and they move through life with a certain ease that almost feels unfair. What you're witnessing is not luck, it's alignment. These people have unknowingly or knowingly aligned their mental frequency. With abundance, with success, with confidence, they expect good things, and so good things find them. And it's not because they're better, it's because they believe better is possible, and their belief shapes their behavior, their energy, and the way they show up in the world. They speak differently. They walk differently. They take risks others won't take, because they're not fearing failure in the same way. And the world responds to that. And you might be thinking, well, I've tried that, but nothing happened. And to that I would ask, how deep did you believe? How much did you trust? How often did you doubt? Because the law doesn't respond to surface level thoughts. It responds to the dominant frequency of your mind. And if you're dominant, frequency is worry or fear or disbelief, then that's the message you're broadcasting, even if you say the right words. We've all heard the phrase thoughts become things, but we don't always understand how literal that is. Your thoughts are not harmless. They are creative forces, and every time you dwell on something, whether it's wanted or unwanted, you are giving it power. You are feeding it energy. And the more energy it has, the more likely it becomes a part of your experience. And this is why people who constantly worry seem to always have more to worry about, and those who are always grateful find more things to be grateful for. It's not coincidence, it's law, and just like the law of gravity doesn't care whether you believe in it or not, the law of mental attraction doesn't wait for your approval. It just is. And once you understand that, you begin to take responsibility for what you think. Not in a way that makes you paranoid, but in a way that makes you powerful. Because now you know you are the architect of your experience. You are not a victim of circumstance. You are the creator of alignment. Your words are spells and your mind is the wand. Every time you speak, you cast a vibration, and that vibration begins to gather energy, like a magnet pulling similar frequencies toward it. So when you say, I am tired, I am broke, I am stuck, you are not describing a condition, you are declaring an identity. And the law responds to identity more than anything else, because identity is belief made permanent. And this is why changing your story changes your life. Not because the story was false, but because the story was fueling your entire vibration, and your vibration was attracting experiences to match it. So if you want to create a new life, you must become a new thinker. You must become someone who no longer entertains thoughts that don't serve you, and that takes work, that takes attention, that takes honesty. It means catching yourself when you complain. Not because complaining is morally wrong, but because it is mentally destructive. It reinforces the belief that you are powerless. And if you keep reinforcing that belief, then no matter how hard you try to improve your life, you will sabotage your own progress at the level of thought. People will argue that this is unrealistic, that the world is too complex for thoughts to shape outcomes, but complexity doesn't negate influence. And the truth is, the most successful people on earth, whether they know it or not, are using this law. They see things before they happen, they visualize their outcomes, and they move as if the result is already certain, and that certainty attracts support, cooperation, opportunities, and even timing. And while others wait for proof, they walk with belief. And belief is the bridge between imagination and manifestation. Your mind is not a storage unit. It is a projector. It shows you what you keep inside. If you carry fear, you will see threats. If you carry love, you will see opportunity. If you carry anger, you will find enemies. And if you carry joy, you will attract celebration. This is why changing your mind is not a cliche. It is the most powerful decision you can make, because when you change your mind, you change your frequency. And when you change your frequency, you change your entire reality. People think attraction is about getting what you want, but it's not. It's about becoming who you need to be to receive what you want. And that means becoming the version of you who already has it, the version who feels worthy, who feels ready, who feels calm, who feels clear. And that version is already inside of you, waiting to be activated by thought, by choice, by intention. So stop thinking of your thoughts as wishes and start treating them like blueprints, because that's what they are. Every repeated thought is a brick, and those bricks are building the structure you live in. You can't build a mansion with bricks labeled fear and then wonder why your life feels small. You can't build joy using bricks labeled shame. You must become the kind of thinker who sees beyond what is and speaks what can be. Not because you're delusional, but because you are directing the flow of your life with precision and purpose. And that is what the unbreakable law of mental attraction demands of you. It demands you become conscious. It demands you become intentional. It demands you take responsibility not for everything that happens to you, but for how you process it, for how you respond, for what you carry with you, and what you release. And once you do that, Once you begin to think deliberately, speak carefully, and expect abundantly, the universe starts to reorganize itself around your new frequency. You will meet people who match your growth. You will lose things that no longer belong. You will be pushed into places you didn't know you needed, and all of it will be in harmony with the vibration you've chosen to hold. And that is the real secret, not forcing the world to change, but aligning yourself so powerfully that the world has no choice but to respond accordingly, because in the end, reality is mental, and mind is the master. Most people don't realize they're hypnotized, not by a man with a swinging watch, but by the repetition of their own thoughts. The same worries, the same doubts, the same insecurities, looping like a broken record in their heads day after day, year after year, and over time, those thoughts don't just stay. Thoughts, they solidify into beliefs, and those beliefs become identities. And those identities shape every decision they make, every relationship they enter, and every opportunity they allow themselves to reach for. And here's where the law of mental attraction becomes more than just theory. It becomes personal, because it's not about what you want, it's about what you're willing to believe is possible for you, because your life will never exceed the size of your belief system. You can wish for something better all day long, but if deep down you still believe you're not worthy of success or love or peace or money or happiness, then the law will honor that belief without hesitation. Not because it's cruel, but because it's obedient. It gives you not what you beg for, but what you believe in. We are all broadcasting stations, sending out emotional frequencies into the world, and what we send out is what we pull back. And yet most people never stop to ask what frequency they're living on. They wonder why things don't change, but they're tuned to the same mental station they've always been on, one of fear or shame or guilt or unworthiness, and then they see people who seem to live on a completely different plane of existence, as if they've found a secret code to reality. But the only code is consciousness. They have learned to observe their thoughts instead of being ruled by them. They have learned to interrupt negative spirals before they gain momentum. They have trained themselves not to dwell in stories that disempower them, and that training creates an inner shift, which creates an outer result, because your thoughts are not neutral. They are instructions. And every time you repeat a negative narrative about yourself or your life, you are giving your subconscious the blueprint to recreate that exact experience again and again. People who understand this law live differently. They wake up with purpose, they speak with intention, they are not perfect, and they are not immune to pain, but they do not identify with limitation. They might feel fear, but they don't bow to it. They might feel doubt, but they don't live in it. They use their mind as a tool, not as a trap. And because of that, they move through life with a quiet kind of power that other people can feel, even if they don't know why people are drawn to them, not because of their appearance or status, but because of the energy they carry. Because energy doesn't lie, and the law of mental attraction responds to energy before it responds to words. You can say affirmations all day, but if your energy is still anchored in lack, then that's what you'll continue to attract. Because the universe speaks frequency, not language, and your true request is not what you say, but what you vibrate. This is why healing is so important, not just emotionally, but vibrationally, because unhealed wounds emit signals. They shape your thoughts, they limit your beliefs, they affect the way you show up, and when you're carrying pain that you haven't processed, it creates a frequency that says, I'm not safe, I'm not whole, I'm not ready. And the law of attraction mirrors that back to you in the form of missed opportunities, broken connections, and repeated lessons, not because life is against you, but because life is showing you what needs to be released before you can rise. And this is the part most people don't want to hear, that mental attraction is not about faking happiness or pretending to be positive. It's about being so honest with yourself that you can finally let go of what's been blocking your signal. It's about facing the shadow, not to dwell in it, but to clear it out so that the light can shine through. Again, your mind is like a garden, and your thoughts are the seeds. You don't get to choose whether something grows. You only get to choose what you plant. And if you keep planting doubt, worry, fear, and judgment, then that is the harvest you will reap every time. But if you start planting courage, hope, clarity, and love, then over time that becomes your mental landscape. And from that landscape grows a new life, not overnight, but inevitably, because the law doesn't care how long you've been stuck. It only cares what you're vibrating right now. And the moment you shift the signal, the moment you change the channel, everything begins to reorganize itself around your new frequency. And this is not spiritual fantasy. This is neural reality. Your brain literally rewires itself based on repeated thoughts. And those new neural pathways lead to new behaviors. New behaviors lead to new outcomes. And new outcomes reinforce new beliefs. And suddenly, you're living a new life because you dared to think a new thought. But here's the catch. You can't just think the thought once and expect magic. This isn't wishful thinking. This is mental conditioning, and conditioning takes repetition. It takes patience. It takes the willingness to return again and again to the thought you want to believe until it becomes more familiar than the thought you've believed for years that told you you weren't enough, that told you'd always be stuck, that told you you'd never change. Those thoughts have momentum because you've given them energy over time, and to replace them, you must now give that same energy to the new thoughts, the thoughts that empower you, the thoughts that inspire you, the thoughts that speak to the version of you who is already living the life you desire. And that's where most people give up. They say it's not working when really it just hasn't taken root yet. And the law is waiting, not for you to be perfect, but for you to be persistent. Think of your mind like a radio. If you're tuned to a station playing sadness and scarcity, but you want to hear abundance and joy, you can't just hope the station changes. You have to reach over and turn the dial, and sometimes that means turning it again and again and again until the static fades and the signal becomes clear. This is the work of mental attraction, not passive waiting, but active tuning, choosing every day what you allow in your head, what you repeat, what you reinforce, what you reject. And as you do that, your inner world begins to transform, and the outer world follows, because reality is a reflection. It is not separate from your mind. It is shaped by it. Every fear you conquer shifts your timeline. Every belief you upgrade opens a new path. Every time you choose faith over fear, you change your direction just a little, and those little changes compound over time until one day you wake up and realize you are not the same person you were, and life is not the same life you once knew. This is how the law works, not by granting wishes, but by responding to will, by rewarding clarity, by amplifying conviction. If you think you're unlucky, life will keep proving it. If you believe you're blessed, life will keep affirming it, and not because the world changes, but because you do, and your changed perspective becomes a magnet for a different experience, and people will look at you and say you've changed, or you got lucky, or it must be nice, but they won't see the inner work. They won't know the thoughts you've fought, the beliefs you've broken, the identity you've rebuilt. They'll only see the result and wonder how it happened. And the answer will always be the same. It happened when you stopped waiting for life to improve and started improving the way you think about life, because that shift is everything. It's not the goal, it's the gateway, the beginning of real transformation and real power. The law of mental attraction is not about pretending that life is always good. It's about knowing that your mind has the power to create good, even in the midst of chaos. It's about being able to hold a vision of where you're going, even when your current reality doesn't reflect it. It's about trusting the process, even when it feels like nothing is happening, because something is always happening. Energy is always moving, and the more aligned you are with your desired state, the more that energy starts to work in your favor. Things begin to shift behind the scenes. People start thinking of you. Opportunities begin forming pathways, open that you couldn't have predicted, and the only thing you did was change your mind and stay with it. And that's the secret: consistency, not intensity, not perfection, not desperation, just the quiet, unwavering decision to believe better is possible and to act as if it's already on its way. We've been taught to chase. We've been taught to strive. We've been taught to hustle as if the power is always out there somewhere waiting for us to find it. But the truth is, the most powerful shifts in life come not from reaching out, but from turning inward. Because what you seek is not out of reach, it's out of alignment. And the law of mental attraction doesn't care how badly you want something. It only responds to how aligned you are with it. It measures your thoughts, your emotions, your self-talk, your inner dialogue, and then it delivers experiences that mirror them back to you over and over until you understand that you are not here to beg for blessings. You are here to become a match for them. This is why trying harder doesn't always work, why wishing louder doesn't bring results, why wanting something so desperately can sometimes push it further away, because desperate energy is still misalignment. It's rooted in fear, in lack in the vibration of not having. And the law doesn't respond to the words you say. It responds to the frequency you hold, and that frequency is shaped by your dominant thoughts, not your occasional hopes. So if you really want to shift your life, you have to start by asking better questions. Not how do I get what I want, but who do I need to become in order to receive it? What kind of mindset does that version of me carry? What kind of habits? What kind of beliefs? What kind of boundaries? What kind of energy the law is? Not fooled by surface changes, it works through identity. And identity is built through repetition, through emotion, through the daily practice of choosing thoughts that align with your highest self. Even when the outside world tells you otherwise, even when results haven't shown up yet, even when it feels like nothing is working. Because the law of mental attraction tests your consistency before it reveals its results, not to punish you, but to train you to become the version of you who can sustain what you're asking for, because getting what you want is not the hard part. Becoming the person who can keep it is. And that's where most people stop. They visualize once they journal for a week. They say affirmations for a few days. And then they look around and say, see, nothing changed. But the law doesn't respond to what you do. Once it responds to what you embody. Daily, your thoughts are setting the thermostat of your life, and the universe adjusts the temperature accordingly. If you keep turning it back down with doubt every time you feel hope, then your environment will keep returning to that default level. Not because you're cursed, but because you haven't committed to the new setting long enough for the law to respond. The universe is not slow. It's precise, and it waits until your signal is stable before it delivers the new experience. Because otherwise, it would be chaos. Imagine if every passing thought became reality. Instantly, it would be overwhelming. That's why there's a buffer, a delay, a grace period to give you time to stabilize your focus, to fine-tune your frequency, to make sure this is really what you want. And that's why mastering the law of mental attraction is not about intensity. It's about steadiness. It's about showing up in your mind the same way you want the world to show up for you. With belief, with clarity, with consistency. Not once, not sometimes, but as a new way of being. People will always say, well, if it was that easy, everyone would be doing it. But the truth is, it is simple but not easy. Because it requires something. Most people avoid responsibility. And not just external responsibility, but internal responsibility. The kind that says, no one is coming to save me. And I am not a victim of my thoughts unless I choose to be. And that's hard to face, especially when you've been hurt, when you've been overlooked, when you've been rejected. But even in those moments, the law is still operating. It's not waiting for your wounds to heal. It's responding to how you interpret those wounds, to what you decide those experiences mean about you. And if you decide that your pain means you're broken or cursed or undeserving, then that becomes your frequency. And the law will align your life to match it, not out of cruelty, but out of accuracy. Because the law is not emotional, it is exact. And that's what makes it so powerful. Because once you understand it, you can use it, no matter where you are, no matter what your past looks like, no matter what you were told you could or couldn't be. You are not bound by your past. You are bound by your mental patterns. and patterns can be rewritten. Beliefs can be replaced. Thoughts can be retrained. And when you do that, the world cannot help but rearrange itself around your new vibration. That's why you don't have to fight your old life. You just have to outgrow it. And growth doesn't happen by force, it happens by intention, by attention, by alignment when you stop feeding the frequency of who you used to be and start feeding the energy of who you're becoming. The shift begins, and the people who no longer match your frequency will fade the opportunities that once felt out of. Reach will appear, and the clarity you've been searching for will emerge, not because something out there changed, but because you changed in here. And everything else had to follow, and you'll look back, not in regret, but in awe, wondering how. You ever believed you were stuck or powerless or unlucky? Because now you see. It was never about luck, it was about frequency, and you were always in control of that. Imagine for a moment that your thoughts are currency, and every thought you think is an investment. What are you funding with your focus? What are you building with your belief? Are you spending your energy on worry and what-if scenarios that never come true? Or are you investing in visions of what could be? If you believed in yourself fully, if you released the fear, if you trusted the process, your mental energy is not unlimited. So spend it wisely. Every thought counts. Every affirmation is a deposit. Every doubt is a withdrawal. And over time, your emotional bank account either grows or shrinks, and the law of mental attraction responds accordingly. It matches your balance, not your wishes. So if you want more, you have to become more mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And that becoming starts in the mind. It starts with what you choose to focus on every morning, every night, every time you catch yourself spiraling back into the old story and gently guide yourself back to the new one. Not because it's easy, but because it's worth it. And here's the final truth. The law doesn't play favorites. It doesn't care about your background, your mistakes, your appearance, your status. It only cares about your vibration. And that means you have just as much power as anyone else to shape your life. The question is, are you willing to use it? Are you willing to think higher, feel deeper, and believe stronger? Are you willing to walk in alignment even when no one's watching, even when results haven't shown up, even when fear whispers that it's not working? Because the ones who truly understand this law know that the shift always comes after the choice, not before the universe waits for you to move first, to send the signal, and then it responds. So if you've been waiting for a sign, this is it. It's time to shift your thoughts, your words, your energy, and step into alignment. Not someday, not when things get better, not when the circumstances are perfect, but now. Because now is the only time that ever matters. Now is where your power lives now, is where the law is listening. The unbreakable law of mental attraction is not just a concept. It is a mirror, a tool, a teacher, and a key. It shows you what you're thinking. It teaches you what you've been believing. It gives you the chance to realign. And it opens the door to a life that reflects your highest truth, but only if you're willing to step into that truth fully, boldly, unapologetically. Because the law doesn't respond to who you pretend to be. It responds to who you are, and who you are is shaped by what you repeatedly think and feel and do. So if you want to change your life, start with what you repeat. And remember, you're not doing this for the world to see you're doing this, so you can finally see yourself clearly. As powerful, as worthy, as capable, as magnetic as someone who no longer waits for miracles, but becomes the space where miracles happen, as someone who no longer hopes for change, but becomes the force of change, as someone who no longer doubts the law, but lives. It breathes it and proves it, not through words, but through results. Because when you live in alignment with the law of mental attraction, you no longer chase. You no longer beg you, no longer force you, attract you, allow you receive, and not from ego, but from embodiment, from becoming the version of yourself who believes without needing proof, who moves with faith, not fear, who radiates certainty in a world that worships doubt. And that version of you is the one who was always meant to lead the way, the one who was always inside you, waiting to be remembered. The one who now has the awareness, the clarity, and the power to live in harmony with the law, not against it. And in doing so, you become the evidence that the law works not just sometimes, not just for others, but for you always, and without fail. Because that is what unbreakable really means. Not unchanging, but unfailing. Always responding, always reflecting, always real. And once you learn to trust that completely, your entire life begins to unfold, not by accident, but by alignment asterisk.